It's just so much pain. You get so tired. We have black children. I have a 15-year-old daughter. I mean, what do I tell her? I'm raising a son. I have no idea what to tell him. It's hard being black in this country when your life is not valued. And people are worried about the protesters and the looters. And it's just people who are frustrated, who for far too long have not had their voices heard. And so you put me on after his brother, and I feel like I lost my brother. And nobody cares about the video. They had a video in Ahmaud Arbery, and 2 different solicitors looked at that video and declined to press charges. And so for those of us who have a mistrust of the system, it's very hard for us to do anything else other than just to cry this morning.
Hello, family. This is African Esquire TV, and I'm your host, Tierney Cherie. I'm sure all of you are overwhelmed at this point, and, you know, it's been a tough week mentally for people who are of African descent. I think it's just been tough, particularly in the United States, although I noticed that our brothers and sisters from all over the diaspora have been commenting on what's going on in the United States. But, you know, if you're living under a rock and you don't know, this week, and this is following the horrible murder and lynching of Ahmaud Arbery, this week was an interesting week because I think we are seeing a repeat of many of the things that were pacified from the system, as far as protests, as far as people actually speaking out against the system. We're seeing a lot of the same type of protests reemerge, and that is because there is a real sense that nothing has changed. No surprise over here, but, you know, for some people, there's a surprise. And let's just get into the details. So, obviously, you know, the first thing that I took notice of as far as the issues that are going on was the story of Amy Cooper, who was a white woman who made a fallacious report to the police on the phone that this black man was about to basically kill her, although this man was like the most non-threatening dude, standing from a distance from this woman and just recording her, basically put in a false police report that could have ultimately gotten him killed. I mean, the picture of a white woman versus a black man is almost always going to lead to death for that black man if it comes to it. And yet this woman felt empowered. And that's really the issue, is that they feel empowered to do things that will put your life in jeopardy. They feel safe doing it. You know, it's funny. She put out an apology about it, saying, "Oh, I regret it. Maybe I did overreact." No, you don't regret it. You regret that you have to pay for what you did. But she felt like she was empowered to do that. She felt like she was in a position where she could be the decider of life and death over this black man. Now, you know, a lot of people in response to this story, the reaction was basically, you know, this man, if you actually look up the dude who she made this call to the police about, this dude is, like, again, the most non-threatening dude. Like, he's a bird watcher. He is Harvard educated. He you know, was an executive at Marvel, I think, some type of comment. Like, basically, this is the guy who we're told to be, you know, as black people. We're told to go to a great school. We're told to become an executive, work inside of a corporation, work for the system. And if you do all these things right, then everything will happen. Everything will happen good for you, right? That's what we're told. And yet, once again, we see that no matter what you do, no matter how many achievements that you get inside of the white world, no matter how much money you make, you're always going to be a nigger to them. I'm sorry if you thought that you would be able to get past that. So, you know, we had this story, and a lot of people, I noticed the reaction was like, well, damn, like, I can't just go and, you know, go this place and feel like I'm safe as a black person. And in my mind, like, when I read these things, I'm like, where have you been? Because I've never, ever had the sense that a black man was free in America. I never had the sense, since I've learned, you know, what is going on. I've never had the sense that a black woman is free. I never had the sense that our communities are safe from these types of people, from people who want to take the law into their hands hands from people who want to demonize us. I just never had that sense. And if you're pretending that you thought prior to this that you were safe as a Black person, I'm sure I can look on your timeline and find you making the exact same comments about the exact same issues, because this happens all the time. And I'm a little frustrated with that, because I'm just noticing, and I'm going to get into this whole issue with what's the guy's name, Shaun King or whatever, but I'm just noticing, like, there's just so much disingenuous people when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to people who pretend to be these activists in the community. Every single time something happens, like, to me, your reaction should not be, wow, that could have been me. Wow, you mean to tell me that he wasn't doing anything and he got targeted by the police? Oh my gosh, what type of world is this? No, this has been the exact same thing that's been happening year after year after year. Since social media has come out, there's been so many stories of this. And before social media, there was many stories in the news. And before the news was an outlet, there was lynchings, there was targeted racism. So it's just so weird to me that people really pretend that they're surprised about these things. Now, the reason that irritates me is because I'm just really noticing. First of all, I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Black Lives Matter is just not a relevant movement to me. It's not the movement that we should be following. It's not the movement that we should be participating in as a people. Why, you might say, don't you care about Black lives? Of course I care about Black lives. But the issue with Black Lives Matter is that the tactics that they use are not helpful to us. In fact, I think they're hurtful to us. The tactic being, you wait until a Black person dies. After that Black person dies, everyone gets mad. Everyone starts posting on social media. Then we all get with our liberal friends and we all go out and protest and all that stuff. And then whenever after a while, maybe maybe the cop gets indicted or something happens. And then after a while, the protest will ease and stop. But then the ultimate injustice will probably happen, and that is what happens in 99% of the cases. The cop gets off, in which case what happens? We're going to protest again. We're going to get mad again. We're going to be sharing things again on social media. But then after time passes, we're not going to be doing anything about that. We're just going to be sitting and waiting for the next person to die. Do you understand how counter-revolutionary that mindset is? I'm waiting for you to do the next thing. I'm waiting for you so that I can protest. And then once that protest is over, I'm going to wait for the next person to die, because those protests don't do jack. Tell me something that is different since Trayvon Martin. Tell me one thing that has changed. Tell me as a Black person that you feel safer today, as safer as a Black person than you did whenever Trayvon Martin's story came out. And I'm bringing Trayvon Martin because to me, he was kind of the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. So, I just think it's very disingenuous. I think it's counter-revolutionary. I think at this point, if you're serious, you have to disengage from these people. And when I say these people, I think we know who we're talking about. We're talking about these people who are social media blue check people. They tend to be that. They tend to be people who socialize inside of groups that are pro-capitalist and these liberal groups. And they tend to be like these career activists. But to me, if you're a career activist and you get, nice endorsements and get to wear these designer clothes based on your salary as an activist, I have questions for you, because I can tell you, it doesn't pay to be a revolutionary. And I'm not saying that, if you're someone who has money and you also do activism, that you should be filtered for that. But if all you do is protest, if all you do is fight the Black cause, and just based on that, you're somehow living in luxury, I have questions for you. I need to know how, because the people who I know who are really about that life, they didn't die rich. Malcolm X died poor, if you don't know. Kwame Ture, he didn't die rich. He died with, basically the people who took care of him were the people who he worked for. He didn't have like a home. He didn't have all these things. He was a career revolutionary. That was what he did, and that was what he was for. And guess what? It didn't pay. What paid for him was seeing his people be uplifted. If you are making money, and we know who we're talking about, if you're making money just off of activism, I just have questions for you. Because I'm not against, if you're someone who's devoted to the cause, I'm not against you being able to take care of your family. But there's a difference between being able to take care of your family and you being like a celebrity who's living in luxury. Meanwhile, your people are living inside of shambles. I mean, to me, even if you're unjustly enriching yourself from your nonprofit, that's something that we have to bring into question. Because if you're making millions of dollars from a nonprofit nonprofit that's supposed to be serving the Black community, or from some type of media corporation that's supposed to be serving the Black community, the poor Black community, if you're a person of substance, why would you want to make that much money from activism? Not make that much money from other engagements, like not make that much money from a business that you have. No, just from activism. That's something that has to be questioned. Which brings me to Shaun King, right? That's his name. This guy, I've tried to like give this guy the benefit of the doubt, and y'all know me. I'm not the person who's going to jump on and just say, "Oh, this person's corrupt," or "Oh, this person they're crooked." I try to give these people space, but I will say this about him. I don't know him. I don't know for a fact if he's if he's a crook. But there's some serious claims that he's been embezzling, basically, or taking money that people thought they were giving towards a cause and keeping that money for himself. And if that is true, and which there's a lot of evidence that would support that it is true, if that is true, then I don't understand what is taking us first. First of all, I just seen that Revolt, despite the fact that a story came out about this man, had him on a panel. Like, at what point do we realize that these people aren't put in these positions by us? I need to know how he got in this position in the first place. How did you get in this position to where you're now the go-to guy for Black Lives Matter? Don't tell me it's just that you've been posting about Black people, because the dude literally came out of nowhere to me, which is also suspect, because I personally question and I personally look at any person who became a person of prominence, who uses that, who's a person of prominence inside of the activist community for Black people, but didn't go through Black people. That's a concern that we need to have. Anytime that person didn't come through us, understand they're being funded not by us. The people who came through us, they talk a little different. They're a little more authentic. Maybe I don't agree with everything that Dr. Umar Johnson says. Maybe I don't. But I have no question that this dude came through us. And I have no question about that, because he doesn't speak in a way that he feels like he has to watch what he says because he doesn't want to offend this money or he doesn't want to offend that money. Why, again, you might question some of his actions, you might question some of his philosophy, but you will not question whether or not that man came through the Black community. So people who come through us, people who rise through us, people who we uplift and put in that position, they're not going to be inside of certain circles. They're not going to be inside of certain places. They're not going to be enriching themselves off of our money. And that's the type of thing that has been allowed to continue. But I promise you, these people are being upheld by the system, because there's absolutely no reason for you to have the privilege to speak on behalf of my community when you didn't come through my community. That is my honest position. I don't understand these people who have this mentality of, I'm going to go to Harvard University so that I can be an activist. That doesn't even make sense. If you want to be an activist for the Black community, start on your street corner. Go to people on your block. Go to a local organization. Go that way if you're not from the hood. Just do something in the community. This idea that I become a published author and and from there I'm going to become this media pundit, and whenever something happens to the Black community, you're going to call on me and I'm going to be one to actually speak about what is happening, when your allegiances to me are already questionable. Your allegiances are questionable if you did not get your position from us, period. So, this really goes back to something I talk about a lot on this channel, the fact that we are colonized. Because when you are colonized, the people who are put into the position to speak for you, the people who are put in the position to represent you, they're not the people who have your best interest in mind. They're the people who are there to pacify you so that your oppressor can continue oppressing you. And I see just so much of this week. With what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, there's a lot of people who are just they're not here really to do something revolutionary for us. They're here to pacify us. And until we make a separation as a people, we have to make a distinction. I don't care about what your ideology is. I don't care if you are I don't care if you're a certain religion. I don't even care, honestly, if you believe in different things, as far as if you believe in things I don't agree with as far as gender identity or whatnot. I don't care about that. If you are for my community, you're for my people, then we need to make a distinction. Who are these people who are going to speak for us? who are these people who are going to represent us? Because if they are not representing us from a genuine place, we need to actually be in a position to organize and call them out. I personally think that there has to be a collective effort from those organizations that are pro-Black, that are pro-African, that are pro-us. There has to be a collective effort to say enough is enough. These people do not speak for us. And if you're going to have them on your platform, fine, have them on your platform. But we need to have a clear label that you're having them on their platform not to speak directly to the issues of the community. You're having them on a platform to speak to what you want to hear. You're having, just like, what happened with Al Sharpton and Charlemagne on some MSNBC show. Charlemagne said, we have a right to bear arms. Black people, with all this is going on, you need to actually exercise your right to bear arms. What was Al Sharpton there to say? Al Sharpton was there to say, well, we don't have to practice. I'm for nonviolence. We should try to do nonviolence. And the question is, okay, you can be for nonviolence, violence. And you can be for the right to bear arms. You can be for the right for someone to protect themselves. But why are you there to put that message into the air that Black people are going to be okay with someone taking our lives and we're okay with not fighting back? Like, it's just not a productive thing. So, like I said, we have to be here to draw distinctions between these people, and we have to organize to do it. And let it be clear, if you're going to have someone on that platform that didn't come through us, and I'm not saying Al Sharpton didn't. Al Sharpton came through us in other ways, but to me, Al Sharpton at this point, he said a lot of things that we would say may make him compromise. But if you're someone that didn't come through us, or you're someone who's not going to speak for us and speak undeniably for us, if you're someone who has other connections outside of the Black community that you have to protect, that you have to uphold, if that's what it is, then let's just draw a distinction. You can have this person on your platform. You can have Van Jones on your platform to speak about the Black community. You can have them on your platform, but let's be very clear. They're not there to speak for us. They're there to speak to you about us, but they're not here to speak for us. Because anyone who I've talked to, I have not met a Black person in my personal life who is okay with us being unarmed and not having protection over our homes. I don't know any. So if you have some that's saying, hey, you could shoot us down, you could choke us out, you can do all these things, and we're just gonna be okay with being defenseless. If anyone is telling you that, I personally think that you're listening to someone that's not any even close in the thought and ideology of the Black community. Understand, I know preachers, who believe in the right to defend yourself. I know deacons. I know leaders in the Nation of Islam. Obviously, but I know people in all different types of areas in the Black community, different sects of the Black community, who are not okay with us being defenseless. So that is what I want to say about that. Obviously, the other thing that happened was the horrible murder of George Floyd, who was choked like he was an animal. A cop putting his foot into his neck, and choking this man, despite the fact that the man was pleading with the cop, to get off of him. Which, again, if you're surprised that this happens in America, where were you when Eric Garner was murdered? That's what I'm saying. People are being very disingenuous if they're saying that this is something that we don't expect. But the response, and I don't even know if it's just, I notice a lot of white people doing the rioting personally, but the response that I see is, a lot of us are angry, which is normal, and a lot of us lash back at the system, not in a way that's organized. Because riots, while they, as Dr. King said, they're the language of the unheard. Riots, they certainly are an action. They're not an organized action. They're not going to change the system that we live in. They're not, it's one thing if you're organized, in your riot, but typically we're not. Typically we're acting out of anger. So this is the situation that we're in. We're in a position, in my opinion, that we're going to see another cycle of this thing happening. We're going to see another cycle of people being upset, people being offended, people being hurt, but we're not going to see much come out of it because the fact is we don't believe that we could see anything come out of it. If you really believe that you could see something come out of it, I personally believe you'd be a lot more organized than people by now. I think we feel like we're powerless and we feel like all we can do is appeal to the system that is oppressing us to do different. But of course, the system that is oppressing us benefits off of that oppression. So, this is a police state. Why would the police state not want to have police? Why would the police state not want the police to be controlled, or want the police to be controlled? If anything, the police state, they want the function to continue of the police state, and the function of the police state is to keep the people who are a threat to the system under its control. So I don't anticipate this being any different, and that leads me to the purpose of this video, I'll say, because with everything that was going on, I wanted to wait before I commented on my thoughts until I was sure about what I wanted to say. And I've said this on this channel that my personal belief is that, we need to repatriate back to Africa. Now, I've always respected the fact that some of us do not want to go back to Africa. When I say I respect it, I don't understand it. But some people feel that, hey, we've been here for this long. We've died for this country. We have sweat for this country. We built this country. Therefore, why would I go anywhere else? This is the only place where I can see myself being. The question is, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want from your existence? That's what the question is. When it comes to people who are of the mindset that what they want is America, I'm not here to judge that. I'm not here to condemn that. But be clear what you want. Because I'm going to be very real. I don't believe there's ever going to be a day with the United States intact, meaning the United States with the Constitution and the political institutions that exist today. I don't believe there's ever going to be a day where you are safe as an African person in the United States of America. And I don't think that anyone who believes that there is going to be a day, I don't think that they're really thinking clearly about the situation. There has never been a day when we have been safe. Understand, we don't have a short history here. 400 years, that's pretty significant, I would say, for people, because we've been here essentially, outside of our people who were already here, people who were brought here through the slave trade. We've been here essentially from the beginning, from before when the Constitution was enacted. So when you consider that, when you consider the fact that the system of oppression is still intact today, when you consider the fact that the system in the United States that oppresses us is linked to the fact that the government structure is built in a certain way to oppress us, when you think about these things, think about the fact that this was a country that was essentially founded on private property, and that we were the property of this country. We were never intended to be the citizens of this country. We were never intended to have protections in this country. And by every show, from what I can see, we're never going to be treated outside of us being slaves in this country. So let's be honest. Certainly not in my lifetime. Certainly not in our lifetime. So is there ever going to be a day where you're going to be safe as a black person in the United States of America? Now, I say no. And again, if you say yes, I urge you, have some precedent ready. Meaning, give me a time where we were safe. Because of course, there were times where things weren't as bad for us. Black Wall Street, we weren't doing as bad whenever Black Wall Street was there. But of course, Black Wall Street got burned down by some terrorist white supremacists. So again, give me a day. Give me a reference point. From when this government was intact. When were we ever safe in the United States of America? I say never. And if you disagree, give me something that will disprove me. And based on that, based on the fact that the system is still intact, I think we can honestly have peace with the fact that this country was not built for black people to be safe. So when I say, what do you want? Are you okay with living in a country where you'll never be fully safe? Are you okay with living in a country where your children will never be fully safe? And if you are, then there are things for you to do. You know, I'm not condemning people who have that feeling, because we can organize. You know, there has been movements in the past where Black people have organized. You know, we ensured we were armed, we ensured we were protected, and you can organize in that type of way in America, and there's nothing wrong with that. But understand, you're always going to live with a enemy who does not care for your life, that wants to see blood in many instances. You're always going to live with that person around you. Now, Africa, when I say repatriate back to Africa, Africa is not perfect, you know, and when you look at what's going on, Africa is still under colonialism. Now, there are parts of Africa where the influence of colonialism isn't as strong, and there are parts of Africa where the country is more intact than others. I personally would feel that I had more an incentive to fight for Africa to be free than fight for a freedom in America. Based on the fact that I know that at one point Africa was free. I know that at one point we were self-governed, and I know that that situation that is happening there, should the right people be inside of a position to change things, that could easily happen. But I have no faith that that is the same in America. I just don't. And am I saying, you know, drop everything now and go to Africa? No. Obviously, you plan for those things. But and when I say, what do you want a world where your descendants are going to be free, where your descendants are going to be able to say, this is my land, this is where I belong, this is where I don't have to worry about some racist cops? Do you want an existence? Or do you have peace with the fact that, you know what, let's just take action in where we are in the United States that's going to keep us relatively protected, us being a smaller proportion of the population that is inside of a colonist country, a colonist state. Are we ever going to be completely safe? No. But you can take measures to organize, you know, on a local level. And you can certainly take measures to ensure that things like what happened to Ahmaud Arbery or things that happened to George Floyd don't happen, you know. But we're always going to be under the threat of those who don't care for us and those who do look at us as not as slaves. And that's your decision to make. So, in conclusion, I say all this to say, the solution in this instance is to figure out what you want. If you are of the mindset that I am okay with staying in the United States, but I want to stay in the United States where or people are more organized, then I suggest you start organizing. I suggest that you do get a firearm to protect yourself. I suggest that you start organizing locally for that and ensure that at least in your community you are safe. Now, are you going to be safe on the highways? That's the question. Are you going to be safe when you leave your community? That's a question. But I encourage you to do that. If that's not enough for you, then I encourage you to start making plans. Start making come up with an idea of what would going back to Africa look like. Again, Africa is not perfect, but is there a fight there for you that's actually winnable and worth winning? You know, or you know, or is there just a better life for you there? Because frankly, you know, even if you're not someone who's like a revolutionary and you move back to Africa, you could probably live a happy life there, to be honest. You know, you could be completely not involved with politics. And despite the fact that, you know, there's neo-colonial policies going on, if that was your type of life, you'd be fine, because frankly, the US dollar that we make here takes you a lot farther. Which is why a lot of African Americans have retired in Africa and live happily ever after. So figure out what you want. That's really my suggestion. Figure out what you want, and from there you can figure out what's the best action for you. But if your only reference point at this point is what Black Lives Matter has been doing, that is protesting police brutality, that is fighting by, you know, protesting and going on social media and arguing and all that stuff. If that's your only reference point, I just say that you have to understand you're not fighting in a winnable way. And if what you want is freedom, that's not going to get it for you. So that's all I have for this video. I'm sure I'm going to follow up on this, but bless you. That's all I have for this video. Hope you all are staying safe, and I will see you all in the next video.